Jammu and Kashmir of a terrorist attack, and tragic news also coming in that 3 soldiers have been killed, 2 injured in this attack on an army camp.
Right, Gargi, terrorists barged into this army camp in Rajouri. 2 terrorists were killed in the encounter. This is the first major attack in Jammu and Kashmir in a very long time, Gargi. So
right, and coming just ahead of Independence Day, let's go across to Nazir for more on this. Nazir, what are the details?
Well, at around 3 a.m., 2 attackers, they barged into an army camp in Darhal area of Rajouri district, which is considered largely free from militancy, and they resorted to heavy firing inside the camp. Army repulsed the attack, and in the encounter, 5 soldiers were injured, and 3 of them have died due to their injuries, and 2 are injured. And both the attackers, Fedayeen attackers, have been killed according to army. The encounter is over, but the operation is still underway. Police, I spoke to a senior police officer. He said it is after a long time they are witnessing such a major attack, which clearly shows the intentions from across the border. They are pushing the suicide attackers like the Fedayeen attackers. They are 2 ahead of Independence Day. You know, Amarnath Yatra has ended just today, and there was a lot of concern about the safety of that as well. But fortunately, that went off peacefully. But in this area, which has been considered free from militancy largely, except the infiltration, this is the major Fedayeen attack on an army camp in the area. At around 3 a.m., 2 heavily armed gunmen, they barged inside the camp. They resorted to heavy firing. Army repulsed the attack, and according to army, the troops were alert as they sneaked inside the camp. The attack was repulsed, and in the encounter, both the militants have been killed.
Understand, because I imagine that more details are awaited at this point. But did they manage to really get into the camp, or is this more on the peripheries or near wherever the boundary of the camp is? Were they challenged, or exactly? Do we know these details right now?
Well, this is not any major, army installation. It is like a company of army camp, like a company in Darhal area where they have breached the perimeter, and then there was a heavy firing, and in the ensuing encounter, both the attackers they were killed, and but army suffered casualties. 3 soldiers have died. They lost their lives in action, and 2 have been injured. But this is the worry is it's after a long time, particularly since the ceasefire between India and Pakistan along the line of control in February last year. And since then, there was no major incident of firing or the ceasefire violation or any major big infiltration attempt as well. In fact, according to sources, one of the important understanding between the 2 sides, India and Pakistan army, was that there would not be any major escalation, attack on the security forces. But there have been attempts in the past, but this is the most deadly attack on army, particularly in the area which is considered free from militancy. And the bigger challenge for the security force has been Jammu area, which was free from militancy. Militancy is spreading here. We have seen several incidents here. We have seen recently, several people who were, considered to be protected, considered to be, on the side of the mainstream. They were found to be the Lashkar operators, and according to senior, police officer, the attackers are from Lashkar-e-Taiba, and they say Lashkar is behind this attack.
All right, and Nazir, we'd also imagine that security would be on high alert right now. You said that this is not an area that has seen such kind of trouble, but one would imagine it would be on high alert ahead of 15th August. And also just yesterday, those reports of an IED discovered with over 20 kilos of it. And then this taking place today.
Yeah, exactly. It is clearly, an attempt to escalate the situation. And clearly, because Fedayeen attacks, they are like suicide attackers, they were attacking the security force installation. It was since 1999 it started during the Kargil war. Then it went on for several years. But for the last few years, they were completely stopped. There was no such attack. But now we see such an attack happening after a long time. It's really a worry for the security forces. Though the army has largely made its installations impregnable, their boundary walls with all the security arrangements, with these watchtowers, and all the equipment in place to prevent any such incident. Yet we see in a isolated security forces camp in this area where they have breached the perimeter, and then they resorted to heavy firing. So it is actually, when someone is ready to die, it's not easy to prevent or stop him. So in this case, when these suicide attackers or the civilian attackers, they knew they had to die, so they tried to breach, sneak inside the army, and in the ensuing encounter, 3 soldiers have lost their lives in action, 2 have been injured, but both the attackers have been killed in this encounter.
Right, Nazir, we can see a lot of checking happening there. Has security been beefed up in the area, considering in the run-up to Independence Day? And this is the second incident that's coming to light. Yesterday, like Gargi was mentioning, 25 to 30 kgs of IED was recovered. And then, of course, when the police were going on to say a major tragedy had been averted. But then today we have this major tragedy that struck in Rajouri.
Well, if we see the security is always on high alert in Jammu and Kashmir. There's maximum number, whatever is possible, that has been deployed in this area. But the problem is such, it is the enemies are sometimes unknown, sometimes unseen, and the other, neighboring country, they are always, planning to cause trouble, and they push the, militants from there, and then they had stopped actually sending these suicide attackers. But this attack is a worrying thing, that they have pushed, whether it is also to be ascertained whether this is a newly infiltrated group who has carried out this attack, or they were operating in the area. In fact, for the last few days, we were hearing that there was some suspicious movement in the same area. And in this pre-dawn attack, they carried out this suicide attack on the army. Normally what we see, the security force were they were launching the operations, anti-militancy operations across Jammu and Kashmir and neutralizing militants, killing militants. And there was really a very rare incident when there was such an attack on the army. Yes, during the encounter, security force sacrificed, they lost their lives, people die in action. But the fact is, this attack is after a long time, which clearly shows the intentions from across the border as well. And that too in an area which has been largely free from militancy, and Jammu has remained, at least this year, a major concern of the security for the government, because there have been series of incidents.
All right, Nazir, thanks so much for joining us with that. So tragic news coming in there from Jammu and Kashmir. 3 soldiers killed in action after 2 terrorists barged into this army camp in Rajouri. And this was the Darhal camp in Rajouri. Both the terrorists were killed in the encounter. 2 other soldiers were also injured. And this attack, as we said, occurred at an army camp in Darhal in Rajouri. 3 soldiers were killed.